Alberto, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
We are meeting here today courtesy of our mutual friend, Steve Shady, former WCA guest who's been on the show a couple times. I'll put a link in the show notes, audience, for you to check Steve out. Steve's a great guy, does great work. And he's the one that encouraged me to reach out to Alberto.
Thanks, Steve, for the intro. I mean, this is awesome.
Thank you, Steve. Before we get started with the backstory, let's start with where you're at today. Where are you talking to us from, and what do you consider yourself as far as an audio professional?
Cool. I'm in Austin, Texas. I'm mostly a mastering engineer. I do a lot of mixing too, especially lately. I came from more of a producer engineer world and slowly transitioned into mastering since maybe around the pandemic is when I kind of became more of a mastering engineer. I feel like that's my strongest suit and that's what I enjoy doing the most. So it's pretty natural that I guess that's what most of the work comes that way, right?
Yeah. You grew up in Mexico, right?
Yep. I grew up in Mexico City. I left when I was around 19. And I moved to the U.S. for college. I was in New Jersey for about 8 years. And then I moved down here to Texas 10 years ago.
Tell me about growing up in Mexico and the role of music and or technology in your upbringing.
So that was an interesting thing for me because I'm from the generation that, we had a family computer and we were starting to see computers as a part of life. But it wasn't like everybody had a phone in their pockets or, it wasn't as accessible, I will say, to everybody. And I always had a passion for that. The moment my dad got a computer, it's like, oh, this is cool. I learned to navigate and I learned to, do all sorts of stuff there. But at the same time, I had a lot of passion for music. I've been playing guitar forever. I was in bands over there, just local rock bands. I used to love metal and, hardcore stuff. And I had that type of bands going over there. I was always kind of pushing for, I just wanted to be in a band. I kind of wanted to go study music, but coming more from an instrument approach. I feel like in Mexico, that's very terrifying to say because there were, especially at the time, the music industry over there wasn't as, I would say, as powerful as it is right now. Now seeing some of the artists that are coming out of there and the way that the internet has been able to kind of push music from everywhere. I feel like when I was there, especially for rock bands, it was very tough because there wasn't the market like it was here. So I always had it in my mind, I have to go to the U.S., I have to, get on a band and do my thing. And maybe if I go for college, I can make my way into that and, find a band and I'll go from there. My parents weren't very receptive to that idea, justifiably, because at the time in Mexico, there wasn't too much you could do with, a guitar degree. So my dad had a friend that was doing a lot of production work. Across the street from where his business was, it was the studio that they used. So they just walked me in one day and they were like, hey, here, you want to try to be an intern here and, see if you like this and kind of go through a different path of seeing what production was. And at that point, I had never tinkered with, recording software or anything like that. I had tried to record an album with a friend that was into that, but it was super amateur. We never actually went into a studio. This was a bedroom recording, right? To me, I had never explored that world. And going into the studio was very cool because they were focused more on commercials and sound for movies. Mm-hmm. But from day one, they just sat me in front of, they were using Nuendo at the time. And they were like, here's the sound library, here's a movie. You just find things that are making sound on this video and trying to find like Foley and stuff that would be on that video. And this is how you put it on a track. This is a volume and this is kind of how you match it, right? And immediately I was like, oh, this is cool. This is kind of a balance between my musical side and the technology side I like about tinkering with computers and whatnot. So that kind of opened the doors for me of I get it. This could be a path for me. They eventually had a couple bands in, especially the engineers, they all had bands. So I got to experience oh, this is what recording a band is here. So from that point on, I was sold, I bought a little interface. it was when Mbox was big, but I remember getting like one of those Line 6 MIDI keyboards that had like a little interface in them. The thing sounded horrible, but I wasn't happy as like being able to track myself and do demos and stuff. So with that in mind, like this seems more in line with what I want to do, right? And talking with other professional musicians too and engineers kind of gave me the perspective of, I like to play metal and rock, right? And they're like, you can already play that. You're not going to go to college to learn that. Like if you wanted to do jazz, or if you wanted to, be a session musician or a concert musician, like sure, that'll make sense if you go into a guitar career. But if what you're trying to do is make music, it's like maybe come from a different approach and like check out what engineers do, because they kind of saw that, I had like an inclination for it. So I found at the time, this was before every college had an audio engineering degree. I feel like everything was just starting, like these programs were starting to, show around. And I found that they were called music technology back then, right? This was like maybe 2005 or so. I found a couple colleges like in London. There was a couple across the US, and I ended up going to New Jersey out of all places. I was like, well, this works. This looks cool. It's right next to New York City. Like I'm sold. So I moved there when I was 19, and it was pretty cool. I got to learn from a lot of different artists there. Because I'm an international student, you get 1 year to do internships. So one day I'm just like, I need to find an internship at a studio, right? And at this point, I'm like, I need to find a way to stay here. Like I need to get a job. So I want to be very serious about this. So I'm like going through all my favorite records, kind of researching producers, and at the time too, I feel like it wasn't as approachable as it is now, where everybody's on Instagram and Facebook, and you can, get on Facebook and message like Vance Powell, and like he'll reply to you. Like he's a super sweet guy, right? Back then, I feel like that wasn't common at all. Like there wasn't any of these personal interactions like we see now. So it was literally finding a name, trying to find a website, trying to find where's their studio, see if I can find an email or any information I can find, right? And so I was a big Lamb of God fan, and looking at Sacrament, I see Machine, and I see he's in New Jersey. He was in Hoboken at the time, right? So I was like, oh, this is awesome. It's like 15 minutes away from where I am. Like, this is perfect. I found the email of his engineer, Will Putney. So I shoot him an email, and I was like, hey, I'm super interested to be an intern. Like, I just want to be a fly on the wall and like learn whatever I can. If you guys have a program or anything like that, like, I was happy to clean toilets and just be in the room learning. And Will was super nice. He was like, sure, come on over. We'll chat about it. In that moment, they had about 2 other interns. And what was very cool about that is, especially comparing my experience as an intern in that area at the time, I had like mentors, right? They weren't so much as the food chain of like the interns are going to help the assistant engineer who helps, the engineer, et cetera, et cetera. And as an intern, you can't even be in the room with the artist. Like there was none of that. Like here it was like, you're part of the family and you're allowed to use the studio and do your own records and learn, because they encourage that. And the only way to advance is learn new skills, and we'll pay you for those skills, right? So figure out how to track drums and how to use Beat Detective, right? Figure out how to tune vocals. And then they were kind enough to like sit with me, like I'll try to tune a vocal, and they'll come with me and, select all the areas that are wrong, color them differently, like listen to that and go again until like I develop those skills. And then they were like, cool, we can start hiring you for these things, right? I was very, very lucky to have found that, and very grateful to both of them, because I learned a ton. And I landed about 2 months before they were moving the studio from Hoboken to Belleville. And in Hoboken, there was only 2 rooms. And in Belleville, we took an entire building. It was insane. It was like a commercial building, right? But it was almost like abandoned. Artists were renting sections, and we rented one that was right next to what My Chemical Romance's studio used to be. So it was like this huge building that, no AC, no heat. It was just all industrial stuff. So we kind of had to build it from the ground up. And that was great for me too, because that's when I started learning like, okay, so this is how you build a room, right? Like this is how we start tuning the acoustics of a room.
I wanted to ask, how old were you at this time?
So this is 2011. So I was 20 years old, 21 maybe.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And you were still going to school, right?
Oh yeah, I was going to school, and it was down the road, but I feel the high school that I went to was so, I want to say, punishing. You know, it was very demanding to where like I had to do the school hours and I had to go home and like work all these hours on homework and catching up and like trying to find a tutor and stuff like that. That when I went to college, even at the maximum amount of credits that I had to take, it just felt like a breeze. Like I was like, I can do this stuff on my sleep, right? Like I don't have to dedicate that much time. I can literally just go to class, get out, go to the studio, and if I need to do anything, like I'll figure out whenever I come back at night. If I need to write a paper, I'll write a paper like in the middle of the night. Like who cares?
Why was high school so much harder?
I went to a private high school that it was kind of weird. Their whole mentality was they wanted to over prepare you for college. So they hire college professors. So I was taking the same class from like, let's say like my trigonometry class, right? It was the same class that somebody at their second year of engineering was taking. That was the same class that was being taught to me in high school. So when I come over here and they're, you know, they do like an aptitude or like a math test to see where they place you. Mm-hmm. It's like I already skipped 7 classes, and the class that I'm going to, I basically didn't pass the test because I just didn't know the names in English of stuff. So it's like I can literally sit here and like, if you give me the problem, I'll solve it, but I cannot tell you what this formula is called, or you know what shape is this, or whatever it is. Like that was more my problem. So I was just cruising through college, and like I feel like college, especially at that time, the college that I went to was one of those that is like half common classes. Like what do they call them? So it's almost like general education, and then the other half is audio engineering. So all that stuff I could get out of the way, and the audio engineering stuff, I feel like I had an edge because I was working on label records as we're doing this, right?
Working on label records at the time with the guys in New Jersey from Lamb of God.
Yeah. From like right with Machine and Will Putney. That you know they were doing all sorts of bands like Machine. If you look at his records, are incredible. He's worked with like King Crimson. I would love to introduce you to him. He's on like Fall Out Boy, Gym Class Heroes. Like the man was doing so much, especially back when I joined. It was like we did Clutch records together. Like he's an insane engineer. You'll have a field day talking to him, and he's actually pretty good he's a very interesting person to me, and you know I'm very attached to him because. Not only because he was my mentor, but he thinks of stuff in a very unique way. Like this man will break things to like the 1% that's going to make a difference. And he doesn't care to do the experiments to get there. You know, there's all sorts of crazy stories like recording a metal band one time. He's like, I wonder what it will sound if like we make them play their kick drums with their hands, right? Like all these intricate patterns is like such a big part of the sound. Let's try to track one song where like they're playing the kick drums with their hands. So like overnight I had to get 2x4s and like build a stand so that we can have kick drums standing up and a drummer can like sit in there and play with it, right? So stuff like that it was like just a very curious mind and like stuff very out of the box.
Somebody like that who is having that much success and notoriety, were there also business things that you learned about how to survive?
Yes, and I will say yes and no. I learned it later. I feel like that was one of my biggest mistakes doing this, and nobody prepares you to learning the business side. Like I feel like especially going through college, they push a lot of, you know, audio engineering fundamentals and like just college in general, but nobody's teaching you financial classes or marketing classes, like all these other things that surround, you know, being able to do records. And I feel like I just didn't have that in my head when I was there. So I was more focused on learning the music side and like just working with whatever I could and, you know, trying to find as many musicians and working with the bands, and not so much as, okay, I should probably learn how to keep, you know, books straight and like figuring out, what a budget is and like how much it should account for. I should learn how to market myself, like especially social media starting to become a thing. Like I need to figure out how to do a decent website or just basic stuff like that at the time, I just thought like, whatever, you just do records, they're cool, and you keep going on, the rest will sort itself out.
It's, to me, that's such a hole in the education. Is that
absolutely.
It's so set on, Pro Tools certification and, audio engineering fundamentals, which are great, which are super important. But to me, it's like, it's bizarre that business survival, as you say, marketing, money, like there's like a giant amount of information lacking there.
Absolutely. And not just that, something that I learned later in life. So working with Machine, I moved with him to Austin because we built a studio here. And at some point, I just burnt out and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like, this is like way too much. We were recording like crazy hours. And also, before that, I didn't care to be in the studio forever, like I'll put the hours. Like I didn't have anything else going on in my life. Like this was completely fine. But at some point, like I got married, like I had a wife that I wanted to hang out with. I made some friends here in Austin. I want to see some stuff. So of course there's like the friction of I want to do that, but at the same time I'm spending, 15, 16 hours in the studio every day. Like there's nothing,
Can you connect the dots between New Jersey and Texas?
Yeah. So while we're in New Jersey, Machine always wanted to, like he's been talking about moving to Austin forever. It was an interesting time because Will Putney started to get a ton of work. He was Machine's engineer, and then he got way too busy, and I was like the other guy that was always there with Machine, so I was able to like fill in that void, and that kind of threw me into the fire of like, now you got to record and you got to be as good as Will because that's how I'm going to be judged kind of deal. So, and I was able to engineer for Will too because he had so much stuff coming at the door. So the studio was always full with bands, and Machine kind of saw that too as like, well, this is a good indication that I should probably move and build my own thing. If I want to move to Austin, like this is the time. So, I decided to move with him to Austin. I was like, I don't have anything to lose. I don't have anything here. Like, I just want to go for the adventure. So we moved down to Austin and he built a beautiful barn. It's out in Dripping Springs. It's about 40 minutes outside of downtown Austin. He built this beautiful barn. I came a couple months before him to like kind of start seeing the barn getting built and organizing stuff. And then he came down. But yeah, I mean, that took a minute to get built, but it's an awesome place. I still go whenever I want to track drums. It's such a cool place, and it's a great vibe in there, It's one of those, it's a barn, but it's like a one room. So you're tracking with the band in there. So it's a space that like invites collaboration, and it's a big room. So drums sound great. So I'll always take him on going there to track. But yeah, so I came down with him, and as I was in that process of kind of like burning out and trying to figure out my life, because also I feel like my financials were very rough at the time. One of my friends was opening a record label, like an indie label here in Texas. So I was like, maybe I want to explore that and see what that is and kind of learn more about the industry and see if, there's something I can use my skills and learn something from that and make, trying to make something out of my life and still be involved in music, basically. This was around 2015. Yeah, 2015, 2016. And at the same time, I had an apartment where I had another bedroom so I can put a home studio in there. So it's like if I can just mix records from there and it'll be fine. But I won't have, the pressure of like, I need to pay my rent this month. Like my wife's going to be on me for not spending time with her and, all these things. And I feel like it was also tough bringing bands to the studio because in Texas distances are like, so, you drive a lot and like you need a car over here. So bringing a band was tough because there weren't any hotels near where the studio was. So bringing a band mean the band needs to rent cars, need to drive like an hour in and out every day. So it, of course, like comes out of a budget, and with time that just gets reduced to nothing. So, and that combined with me not learning how to market myself and how to deal with the business side of stuff, like it was just like a, perfect storm. It was just a recipe for disaster right there. So I started working for this label, and that was great for me because I got to see how the industry works. And I had to learn very quickly, how are contracts, how are producer deals done, how are the royalty side of things. And it's like, well, this is...
I'm confused. Which label are we talking about?
Oh, so this is when my friend was opening a label. So I left Machine, and my friend opened a label here. It was called Independent Label Alliance. The idea was to do like an artist-friendly label. Kind of, if you think about it, it was kind of like what DistroKid was doing. Like we wanted to offer artists a deal, but it was like a 50-50 split. But we wanted the artists to basically create their own label. And the goal is we'll educate you on how to work a label, work your own career. And then after a couple of records, we can convert into a distribution system for you. And like we'll deal with kind of like a little bit of the business side, and you deal with your own career, right?
Okay.
So, of course, I was like learning a lot of how the industry works so that we can kind of put a program like that and like sit with artists and be like, oh, this is how you should manage your career as an artist, not just as, kind of like me. Like you just don't grab a guitar and say like, I'm a guitar player and like hope everything sorts itself out. Like because of how the industry works now, you're a business and you have to operate as such to be able to be proficient, right? So that put a lot of things in perspective for me. And that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to start my own studio. I want to do mixing and mastering. And I know now that I have to set up a business around the skills that I have. And, I feel like I'm a slow learner, but I got there. And I was able to start this, which started growing, thankfully. I was able to kind of get more on the mastering side of stuff. I feel like with the times, as they were passing, a lot of artists were learning to produce themselves. Mm-hmm. And that was very helpful for them, but they also needed somebody to finish their things, right? So I kind of became that for them. It's like, you can send me your mix and I can finish it up and I can master it for you and it'll sound better than what you just did in your bedroom. And just relationships with them ended up transitioning into, okay, well, I'm their mastering guy now, right? Like everybody will send me the records to master.
You graduated from the program in New Jersey.
Yeah.
Okay. You leave New Jersey, you come to Texas. Do you have any thoughts about the affordability of Texas versus New Jersey?
Oh, yeah, that was a huge thing, too, because, it was painful in New Jersey seeing, like, at least at the time, I was like, I'm never going to be able to afford a house here. Like, this is insane. Rents for apartments were crazy. Like, you had to live with roommates, and, I was, like, in old buildings that were not cool at all. And coming to Texas at the time, it was like, I can get a beautiful apartment for myself here that has a pool and like it's super cheap. Like everything around here the food was cheaper, gas was way cheaper. So my monthly expenses also got super reduced, which was part of the goal of moving here.
And your wife, you two met in New Jersey or you met in Texas?
We met in Texas. Like I met her right whenever, like in the first couple months when I moved here.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to fill in some of these missing pieces for myself so I understand the story a little better. Yeah. And once arriving, did you, like making a living, was that you were working for Machine still?
Yeah, I was working for him, and I had some clients that I would just do mixes for and kind of stuff remote.
Okay.
So while the barn was being built, like I can still do some work on my own.
And was there a particular reason that you just, because the way you phrased it, you said that I left Machine and started working for this label with a buddy, but
yeah,
was that like literally a clean cut? Did you say, I'm stopping this, I'm going to go do this label?
Yeah, like I was getting pretty burnt out, and one day I was with Machine and I was just like, well, what happened was I was driving towards where the studio was, and I flipped my car and ended up in a ditch, and the car was lighted on fire, right? And it was like a big realization for me, like things like this can derail my life because I don't have savings, I don't have anything around me. I feel like I'm unhappy at the moment, like I'm struggling, like I need something else in my life right now. Like this is, it was driving me crazy. Like I need some sort of change or something to happen. And I feel like part of that was me having to explore that business side of life, like you can't just live in the creative world. You have to supplement it. if you want to be successful. So
Yeah.
it's, school of hard knocks, but that's how I learned my lessons. And at least with the label, I felt, okay, I can get a salary here, so I can learn how to budget myself better. A big thing for me is any job I do and any work I do, I kind of want to better myself, right? Like I want to learn and get something out of this. I've never been a person that does a job just because I'm going to get a paycheck and then, 5 o'clock hits and like, it's over. I can now be me. Like that just doesn't, it goes against my nature. So I had to do something that I believed in, and just working with this label, they kind of wanted to do that with artists, like develop artists. They had a budget for it. Part of the plans was they were going to build a studio, and they ended up buying one downtown, and it's finally done. I ended up leaving 2017. So it took them a long time, but the studio's finally there. It sucks I never got to track there. But that label kind of aligned with what I was doing, and I saw that as like an opportunity to maybe learn a new skill, and like maybe it's a different career path, and like see what happens, right? But I still felt like I needed to keep doing records. Like there's something, there's something that calls me about that. Like it's a strength I have that I really enjoy, especially finishing records. Like just the mastering side, I think like it's so cool. Mixing a record, it's awesome. It's inspiring. Like there's just something about that I just can't abandon. So it was cool to be able to have a check and separate that and kind of fall in love with it again. And naturally that started developing, and me learning kind of how the business is run and how to sort my life out around that made it so much easier. I've always tried to keep, like my studio is in the second story of my house. It's Texas, so especially at the time we were able to buy a really big house. So it's, I have a huge room here where I can have cabs in a separate room. There's a guest room where I can bring artists, and like if they want to sleep there, we can have a singer here for 2 weeks and there's no hotel bill. Like he can stay here with us. It's pretty comfortable to be here. I can spend time with my wife. The moment I'm done, I can hit, power down and like literally walk 10 steps and go hang out with her.
Well, let's talk about that, because the studio that you're in now did not exist when you were at the label, right?
So I had a 2-bedroom apartment at the time, so I was able to set up a studio in one of those bedrooms. And that's kind of how I was discovering like this works a little better for me, because I literally can, I can take a break and I can go hang out with my wife for half an hour. And like that's valuable time, as opposed to going to a studio in the middle of nowhere and then I have to drive, 40 minutes to where I'm living. So I've spent, 4 hours of the day that I could have done something else, like spend quality time here, do chores, whatever I need. So I was able to kind of have more time to myself. And that allows me to, I can go to the label, do that job and do cool stuff, but I can also come and do, mix a cool record if I want, or I can master, 10 songs today. And like, I'm not losing sleep. I'm not derailing my life to do this, right?
So your work at the label wasn't necessarily audio related?
It was and it wasn't. So it was more, I would say more A&R, and I had to learn how to wear multiple hats, which was the best lesson I got there. Because, out of nowhere, it's like, well, now we have to figure out budgeting for an artist, and we have to figure out, how to maintain relationships with managers, and you're going to have angry managers screaming at you and stuff like that before I feel like I was only dealing with the artist. So I didn't have that perception of business talk and like kind of how different relationships need different ways to be nurtured. So like working for that label was a really good learning experience for me.
What was the name of the label?
So it was called Independent Label Alliance, and then it got rebranded to Big Indie.
Okay, and they're still in business.
Yeah. We opened it here. We ended up opening an office in London. One of the biggest acts that we signed was Joe Clore. It's like an indie artist, plays banjo, and I mean that record went gold. Like, it was a pretty cool thing to do at the time. Like, I feel like I was pretty happy and towards the end, things were a little more complicated. Like I feel like I had a fallout with the owners and just kind of wanted to separate, and we had that fallout and it was done. But yeah, I mean, it was a great experience for me.
What was the timeline between leaving the label, getting this house, and setting up shop at home?
So I had this house whenever I was at the label. Like I bought it around the same time. Mm-hmm. Well, a little after, I would say. Like maybe I was 2 years at the label and I bought the house. So I was still working there. And I started setting up here, like coming from a apartment, bedroom, studio to like a big room. Like if you see pictures of this room, it looked ridiculous, especially learning to treat it and whatnot. I was very lucky that while we were building the studio for that label, I had the acoustician that was working there. I became friends with him. So he will come and like just sit with me and be like, oh, you should try this, or like, maybe move some panels and build something over here and kind of start tuning the room. So that definitely helped a lot. And just having producer friends, like Machine he's still one of my closest friends. So anytime he's around, like he'll come to my house and we'll just jam some records in here. So I still get to have a lot of external sources input on how to tune my studio, which that was a huge thing. Just being able to kind of gradually get it better and, better sounding, better gear, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, so around, I will say like maybe 2019 is when this studio is in very decent shape, where I'm making, good sounding stuff coming out of here. And I have like a good mastering setup. Like I can, have the good speakers, I have the sub, like the room is very well tuned. I can hear things super clear. That's one of the best things. Anybody that comes in here gets blown away by how good this room sounds now, which is, it's awesome. And at the same time, it's like, it's so clinical sometimes that I'll listen to some of my favorite records growing up and like I can hear things that I'm like, man, why didn't they fix that? Drive myself crazy. But I guess it's part of it.
Now, how did you fare during the pandemic?
So that was a pretty cool thing that happened. I'm very lucky. I mean, not the pandemic, of course, but I'm very lucky that I was working with an indie artist, and their management did a white label services company. Mm-hmm. And they started getting into soundtracks. And out of nowhere, she messaged me and she was like, hey, I have a record for a soundtrack. Like, do you do hip hop? And I was like, well, no, but I'll try it. Like I'll give it a shot. Why not? So they sent me a track and they were like, the producer's going to approve it. If they like it, like you'll get to master the record. So I was like, cool. Like, what's the worst that can happen, right? Like he doesn't like it and that's it. So I did the track, I sent it over, and they told me the producer was Timbaland, and I was like, oh, okay. So this is like, This is big. And it was a soundtrack for a TV show. Well, it's a YouTube original series. It's called Step Up. And it was produced by Lionsgate, which was the label that she was managing. He ended up liking the masters I did, and I got that record, and that kind of started a relationship with Lionsgate, where every soundtracks that will come, like they'll just be like, here's a soundtrack, you master it. It's a very interesting kind of gig because I never know what's coming. Mm-hmm. It's very fast turn. A lot of times it's just like the composer has it, this soundtrack is going to come out in like 3 weeks from now, 2 weeks from now. So, and we need everybody on board. So it's kind of like stuff where I'll get 20 tracks and it's like, I start the moment I get them, and in either the same day or the next day, they have to have it. So I have to tune my workflow to be super fast, super accurate. And it's also very different styles, right? Like today it could be classical music. Tomorrow it could be like hip hop from Atlanta with like crazy subs. And then the next day is going to be like a collection of indie artists. So I definitely have to learn how to make a process and how to use my tools in a way that it's not like, I can't have a template, like my template can be kind of how I see like a lot of like rock guys or like country guys will mix, where they have the template, I put the tracks in and I have a great starting point. Like I see it more like I have a toolbox and I know exactly what every tool is going to do, and I can kind of tweak depending on what I get, because it could be completely different like one day from the other. So that was great too, because I don't know if you remember during the pandemic, that's when TV shows and streaming exploded.
Oh yeah.
So it was like the perfect gig that could come at the time, because now I'm like, there's shows coming left and right, there's soundtracks coming left and right. And, you know, the other thing that happened at that time is attended sessions kind of disappeared, right?
Yep.
Like mastering, it didn't used to be very common, but now it was like, for sure, everybody's working on the internet, and it doesn't matter that I'm not in LA or in New York or in London. Like, the producer can send the tracks, I can do it, send it to him, and he'll listen in his studio, and like, we'll just jump on a FaceTime, or, you know, he'll send me an email with notes, and like, we can be working very efficiently that way. So that also helped a lot, because, you know, I can work from Austin, which, I mean, it's not as affordable as it was when I moved. All the tech companies moving here kind of made it very expensive, but I was able to get at a time where it was very cheap, and I got my house mortgage and everything very cheap. So a gig like that, I'm like, this is great. I can keep my expenses low. I can keep all this work coming. So it kind of made a good situation for me.
I want to ask you a bit about cash flow, because what I find troubling with some of the bigger companies, and I don't know if you have this issue with Lionsgate, and I certainly don't want to get you in trouble with Lionsgate by the things you may or may not say, but companies like that come at you and it's like, hey, we need this now. And it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of work. You get it done. And then you don't see the money for like 90 days.
Oh, yeah. It's very different with them, because every show or every movie, sometimes it's its own LLC. So it's a different person that's managing that. So yeah, I mean, I could get paid in 2 weeks, or I could get paid in, I think the longest one's been like maybe 5 or 6 months. So, but the beauty of, you know, I feel like the beauty of that is like, I've learned how to budget myself, and also being able to work with a lot of indie artists and like people that self-release records. I mean, those guys, like the moment you're done, they pay. That, at least that's how I work. You know, I don't like to push people for money before I touch anything. Like, usually my approach is, send me the files, I'll master it. Here's what it's going to cost you, and we'll deal with the money once you're happy with your masters or your mixes, right? Like, I don't want people like being like, well, I kind of don't like it, and now I want my money back. I'm like, you know, screw all that. Like, I want to make sure you're in love with the product. We'll get the creative thing out of the way, and then we'll sort out the money. Like, you'll be fine. And maybe I've been burned like once or twice, but it's, you know, it's not been a problem where I want to change that. I feel like it sets up trust, and also artists feel that trust, and like they're happier to just sort it out the moment that it's done. That usually keeps cash flow in a better state. So like, I know I have, you know, all these open invoices coming in. I know now that like it's probably going to take, you know, 3 months, 4 months for this ones, like, so I can kind of budget that. And also, I've been trying to do, so I have like this crazy Excel sheet that I created that a couple of producers like have taken enough from me, because I have every single budget, every single payment that comes in, and it tracks by month how much work you did, how much income came, and then it compares year to year. So the whole idea of this was like, I want to be able to know which months I'm going to be the busiest, which months there's more money coming in, and trying to find a trend, right? Because if I can find that trend, I can plan my vacations around it. I can plan any, let's say, any remodels you want to do, right? Like, there's always stuff that we have to do in studios that stops work. Like, maybe you start buying gear, and now you have gear up to the walls that is all wired in the worst of possible ways, and it's not comfortable to work in there. You're going to have to stop your studio for a couple of days to rewire your place. So if you are able to know maybe April is a bad month, like there's not a lot of work coming in April, you can start planning those kind of things, right? Same with like, if I want to go on a vacation for a week or disconnect for 2 weeks, whatever. So that was kind of the goal of this tracking system I made. And also like being able to budget, right? Like, you got to pay your taxes. You got to make sure you have money for when the taxman comes around. And so now I'm able to see like these big spikes. It's really weird how it happens. There's usually like 2 or 3 spikes when everybody pays. And for me, like the biggest one is usually between July and August. And it's like significant versus other months, right? And like the first couple months, like February, March, it's usually a big dip. So like I know, that's just the nature of it. And it's also crazy because it happens across like industries like the movies. I've seen it happen across like all these indie artists I'm doing. Like just for some reason, that's just how my workflow works.
I love that you track it. And do you ever like see, okay, well, these months are bad. Do you ever ask yourself how you could counter that, how you could increase those months?
Absolutely. And it's trying to figure out how to deal with the marketing strategy maybe for those months. I'll try to figure out if it's like not booking, like I'm not booking too much ahead. Mm-hmm. I got used to these fast turnarounds. So I usually don't book myself out a month or so, right? Like people give me a heads up whenever they can that they're finishing a record around these dates. But for the most part, just people send me stuff and like in 24 hours to 48 hours, like I'll have masters for them. So it's pretty hard for me to kind of estimate those things. So I'm trying to figure out how to book, especially now that I'm getting a lot more mixes. Like I can at least book those ahead. Like people know when they're going to be doing that. The mastering side, it's still very chaotic to me. Like I feel like either mixers take the time and then they send you stuff and they're freaking out because, the records do. Or they just don't know. Like you'll start getting a song at a time and it's kind of open like that.
I know this is not the most sexy thing to talk about, but what do you use to bill people in terms of how do people pay you? Do they pay you a credit card, cash, check? Like how does that happen? And have you ever dealt in any credit card fraud? Has somebody tried to pay you with a stolen credit card? And
I haven't had fraud. So I used to do everything through PayPal. PayPal fees were killing me.
Yeah.
Like once I had this spreadsheet going, I was like, my God, like it's just money coming out the door. And one thing that I realized very quickly was I can literally tell people, hey, you can do PayPal or you can do Venmo. And every single person that is, 33 and under, it's going to be like, cool, and sends you a Venmo and there's no fees. So I was like, oh, okay, let's do that. For big projects, everybody has their own system. It's weird. Some companies send you a check, so I can deposit the check like old school comes in the mail. The new thing I'm seeing is credit cards that are like Trust Bank does these credit cards. It's a single-use credit card that you get on the email. You get 2 emails. So one is a credit card with a number. It's basically authorized to what your invoice was. And then you get a second email that has like the PIN and the confirmation numbers you have to type in. And I can just run it as a regular credit card. So I'll just use like a PayPal terminal for that and like take the hit on whatever fees I get for that. And those are becoming super common, at least in the movie world.
Interesting. So it's like a single-use card specified only for the amount authorized for that invoice.
And it's all digital. So you'll get an email with like a picture of a credit card.
What's that called again?
So Trust, that's the bank that does it.
Okay.
And they're just digital credit cards. And, I love it because the accounting of all these places before I literally have to write a check and mail it to you, and you're like waiting forever. And I've had checks get lost in the mail where I'm like, come on, guys, like we can figure this out, right? So with this thing, the moment they authorize it, it's like, boom, it sends you the emails and like you're done. It's set.
Is it challenging to the PayPal system, like in terms of authorization?
If you just go to your tools, you can just charge it through there. And it just runs like a regular credit card. It just asks you for the zip code. So just make sure you get the billing zip code from them and you're good.
Okay. I'll keep an eye out for that. That's interesting. I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I love it. It's great.
So you seem to have a diverse income stream. I know that you do some consulting work outside of your audio work,
right?
For a company that we really can't mention, as well as, so you've got that, you've got mastering, and you still mix, right?
Yeah, I still mix. On a very rare occasion, I'll do a record. I just had one come out today for my best friends, the guys in Crowbot. They just decided to kind of take the reins of their own career, and I'm super proud of them for doing that. They just got a distributor. They're doing everything from marketing, radio campaigns, and it's been very interesting to see them do this and be on like the artist side and like pushing like, we have to do this and we have to pretend we're a label and I need you guys to do this because we got to push the record kind of deal. So I did a record from beginning to end with them and I love it. It was so much fun. Such a cool thing that, I don't get to do every day now.
How busy are you? Do you have days where you're like, when's the phone going to ring?
Yes, it comes and goes in waves. There's sometimes that I'm getting bombarded that I'm like, oh my God, now I have to like really push for it. Like there's going to be like 2 weeks of punishment. And then sometimes there's just like a week when nothing's happening and I'm just freaking out. Like there's always like, is this it? And I remember hearing in an interview with Andrew Sheps about how he said he did the Adele record, it came out, and then he didn't get a phone call for 3 months.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest comfort for me because I was like, okay, it's not, it's not a death sentence if you don't work for a week. Like, it's just, we're in a business that comes and goes. We're not, what's it called? It's not like a store or something like that you have people walking in the door every day, right? Of course, I would love to be busy enough where every single day I have a ton of work, but maybe I'm not getting that yet. But it also could be that I don't schedule myself, and I'll do these things where I'll drive myself crazy for a week, and then the next week is super chill because I did the amount of work of 2 weeks in 1 week. So,
do you feel that you're fully taking advantage of the possibility of, I mean, yeah, you work on a lot of soundtracks and US records, but you speak Spanish. You grew up speaking Spanish, I assume. Do you feel like you're taking advantage of the possibilities of the market south of the border?
Definitely not. I'm so bad at that, and I've been thinking about trying to get better at that. There's only a couple artists that I work with. I feel like when I was doing heavy records, I used to get more of that. There was like some bands like from Brazil, there's a band from Chile, there's a bunch from Mexico. But kind of as I moved to mastering and like just, I guess living in the US and making relationships here, just kind of transition into that. So yeah, I definitely haven't explored it. Also, one of the big things for me, I've like hit my head against the wall many times trying to figure this out. Marketing is tough because the best things for me have been word of mouth and just making relationships and nurturing them, right? Like I'm the guy that I'll make friends with people easy. And those, like, for example, I'll make friends with guys like Steve, right? I don't push my services. I'm not going to be like, hey, I want to master whatever you're doing. Like, I'm sure everybody that listens to this podcast gets those emails and those messages on Facebook of people you don't know, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I have mix and master for you. Like, that to me just doesn't work out. Like, I kind of want stuff to, if you trust me, you trust me. Like, we'll work on that, right? So I tend to make relationships and I'm happy to do favors for people. And I know that eventually, because I'm top of mind, because, we chat a lot, we're friends. At some point, if you need something, you might reach out to me. Or if you hear somebody needs something, you'll reach out to me. And that never fails. Especially, like, if you're having authentic relationships with people, like, so many people have work that they don't know what to do with, or they just don't feel like it's a good match, and they'll send it your way. And like, I'll do the same, like I have a couple engineer friends that a lot of times people hit me with stuff that I could do it, but like, I feel like this guy will kill it. So you should definitely go with him. Like, I relate into a lot of those relationships. And because I've been in the US for so long and all my relationships are more around here, I feel like that has fallen off. I don't have anybody in, like, especially producers and stuff like that. Like, I don't stay in touch with a lot of producers in Mexico.
Well, far be it for me to tell you what to do, which I wouldn't.
Oh, please.
However, if I, first of all, I got a D in Spanish in junior high growing up in New Mexico, which to this day, my kids give me endless shit about. I feel like that was a wasted opportunity for me to not speak Spanish, because I think that's, if you speak English, I think Spanish is the next language. If you live in the United States, you should be learning. And if I had your ability to speak Spanish, I would be all over that. I would be
Yeah.
constantly like marketing to that part of the world because there is so much. Now that said, what I find really interesting is if you're on some of these services that, you know, where people can shop around and find mastering engineers, mixing engineers, the rate of what people charge in different parts of the world, and this is not just, you know, Mexico or Central America,
Right.
the rate can be quite low
Yeah.
because of cost of living and what the market
Right.
will bear. And then you put that out into a global marketplace, it becomes frustrating because as
For sure.
a US based mix engineer charging what I feel is appropriate rates for our market, then I see these guys on there that are charging like, I'll do your mix for $25 or your Atmos mix
Right.
for 50. And you're like, motherfucker, how do I compete with that?
Right. The other thing that's pretty crazy and it's not talked about is the standard of or the expectations of those mixes, right? Like you see all those people saying $25 for a mix, but then you see the kind of files that they're getting and the stuff they're getting, right? And it's like a beat ripped from YouTube and a rapper with one vocal. So mixing means you're moving two faders. And then some guy in a band is going to see that and is going to think, oh, $25, and then sends you 200 tracks because they overproduce everything and like can't commit to stuff. Send you, the same guitar take with 5 different mics. So you have to sort all of that stuff for them. It's like, how can I charge you, even a decent price for a mix when I literally have to produce your record because you don't even have guitar tones or drum tones. Like you're selling me MIDI notes, dude. Like, stuff like that. So, and I think a part of that is because we're all working for ourselves, it's hard to be transparent with pricing. Everybody kind of keeps it very quiet until you inquire about it, right? So I don't know. I feel like a part of it is like we should be more open about prices for stuff and what it includes, right? What are the expectations?
And I guess what I need to keep in mind and remind myself and remind the audience who also feels that frustration is the people that you want to associate yourself do not buy $25 and $50 mixes.
Right.
They're serious about their career and they hire professionals to do a professional job. They've done a professional job, so they'll send it to you professionally ready to mix, hopefully.
Right. The other thing is like we have a responsibility to educate our consumers. Like every business has that. So a lot of times the people that are reaching out to you with those kind of things are just misguided. Like they read something online and they're coming to you because that's what they think it is. Good example, like I was talking yesterday with this artist that just messaged me saying like wanted me to do a test master for them. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, who's the artist? Can you send me anything they release? Like, what's the plans for it, right? Because they told me they were test mastering like a bunch of different people. So I was like, this sounds like something that, is just getting shopped around and like everybody's going to get dicked around. So if everybody's getting dicked around, it better be a huge artist or something that is worth it. Because at that point, sure, like let's all jump in the competition and like make the best of it, right? So I like poked around and like trying to figure out who it was. And they're like, no, it's unreleased. And he was, some rapper in his bedroom doing a beat. So I'm like, you're wasting everybody's time. And I don't want to like, a part of me wants to just be like, what the fuck? Like delete. But on the other hand, I think it's not coming from a mean place. It's just ignorance, like they just think that's what you do. And it's like, well, you kind of have to see there's leverage and you have to be able to negotiate, right? And right now you don't have leverage because you're a new artist. So you're going to have to figure that out. Like that's something that in our industry, we're not taught how to negotiate. And it's a speech I give to every band that is on sign because they think I'm going to get signed and they're going to get me money and it's going to be great. I'm like, dude, you got to think like Shark Tank. You're a business and you're going to Shark Tank, right? And if you don't have your numbers straight, if you're not coming to them saying, I do this many streams, I sell these many records, you're going to get a shit deal. They're going to take advantage of you if your music is good, and you're going to have zero ownership. Or the opposite's going to happen. You have your shit together. You can tell them, this is how the business is structured. We make a ton of money on merch if you're interested in a 360. We play these many shows. If you want to do tour support, our past 2 records sold this many records. We're streaming here. Our social media is doing blah, et cetera, right? So then you have leverage. You're a business that needs funding, and that's what a label does, really. So I will say it's the same for artists going to producers, like trying to leverage what you have. If you can't pay their fee to get a mix, like, cool, what else can you do? There's many things you can offer, right? I don't know, if you're a medium-sized band that gets attention with magazines, for example, leverage publicity. Like, we'll make sure your name is in there and there's a little paragraph about you. Or you can get royalties on the back end. Or there's a million things that you can talk about that you can negotiate as an artist. But I feel like we're taught that negotiation is part of business and we don't want to deal with that, right? We're creatives here.
The other frustrating thing is that it, like audio, which I think all of us can relate to this concept. Once you hear quality audio as you're coming up, your expectations and your professionalism grows in that department. And it's also the same with the people that you work with, the clients that we work with.
Right.
Once you experience a quality client in a professional situation, you don't want to go back.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It is crazy, too. The, newer artists will like knick-knack with recalls, like turn it up, now turn it down. And I put it here, and I put it back. And the more experienced people you work with, like either the recalls make sense or it's just like, no, that's great, thanks, love it. Like, man, it's crazy.
I know. And the more experienced client, if they do have recalls, they're like purposeful, focused on like, hey, the guitar solo really needs to come up. You're right. Really underplaying this. Or the vocal for this aesthetic for what I do, I like the vocal really loud or really quiet or
right. Like dry it up a little. Like, yeah, right. It's usually stuff that, it's taste and like it makes sense, but they trust you and they hire you because they like what you do versus somebody that hire you because they see you as a serviceman,
Yeah. Yeah. Do you ever fire yourself from a project?
What do you mean? Like,
meaning you get into it, you realize, oh my gosh, I'm not enjoying myself here. I'm chasing somebody's vision and I'm not actually doing what I do best.
Yes, it's happened a couple times. It's not fun. A lot of times you kind of have to learn when to call it quits. And I don't have a problem having the conversation of we have different visions and we're going different ways and like you're not going to get there with me. Like this is just I'm going that way and you want to go that way. So I don't know that we're going to be able to meet in the middle if you even don't want to go to the middle, right? You want to keep going that way. Usually, like I'll listen and I'll try to fix if it's something that I missed the mark or whatever. I'm like, cool, let me try what you want. But if we keep trying and like it's still not what you want, like I might not be the guy and that's fine. We have such a subjective product that we're given, right? Especially when it comes to like mixing or the more creative side of making records. It's hard because there's not like, it's not quantitative. You can't say like, oh yeah, this is a 9.5, whatever. It's just how everybody experiences it. So if the artist or whoever hired you is just not there, I'm just wasting my time, There's been a lot of like, just do it yourself. Like I had a record not too long ago where we went through, he sent me his reference masters, which basically was just slammed. It was just somebody putting like, a limiter and a clipper and just slamming it. And I was like, it doesn't sound great to me, but if that's the vibe that you're going for, I can kind of go for that, but try to make it a little different, like kind of fix the things I'm listening to. And, we just kept going about it. And at least I think he just wanted what he did. Like we were just running in circles to what he did. And in the end, like, it was just like, it's fine. Like they ended up doing their own thing. So it's like, cool. we just did this for nothing, but all right.
Yeah, the range of client professionalism, and when you get a good one,
I love
man, it's just like
Yeah.
you wish you could clone those people.
Yeah.
Do you have a brother? Do you have a sister?
Right.
Do they have a record that needs mixing? Because I could do that. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you are excited about that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I think AI is a huge thing that is going to impact us, and it can be for good, it can be for bad. I think we are in the starting stages of it, and as audio engineers, it is very easy to understand once you get under the hood. So I definitely encourage everybody to kind of start poking around and learn about it, because it's definitely going to be, for the good engineers, it's going to be an amazing tool. For the dudes that are mixing a $25 beat, it's going to suck. So yeah, definitely learn about it. It's pretty cool, and it's definitely here to stay, you know. I feel like there's always going to be humans behind it for it to work. So you want to be that human.
Yeah, don't bury your head in the sand and you know, scream the sky is falling.
Right.
Because there's some really interesting advancements. I mean, just toying around with Chat GPT alone, you know, if you struggle in marketing yourself, for example, in social media posts, you know, you can get on Chat GPT and feed it some information, train it about who you are, what your aesthetic is, and you can say, give me a Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, and Instagram's contextual post that mentions the following, and then you can keep tweaking it, and then finally you'll arrive at something that makes sense to you that will work. So it can complement, I think, what we do where we maybe are not so great at.
Absolutely.
You know, like, you know, if you want to, let's say you get maybe an email from a client that infuriates you, but you want to keep the diplomacy, you know, right up front. You can say, hey, ChatGPT, I just received this email. I'm furious, but I need to respond diplomatically. Can you help me craft an email that keeps the peace, gets the point across? It's great for shit like that.
Absolutely. And yeah, like you said, like that's like the starting place for it, right? Like it's like we're watching the beginning of the internet. So you want to get good at it right now.
Yeah. Is there anything on the engineering front and the mixing or mastering front that you think we should be paying attention to regarding AI, of course?
How we deal with audio, usually we're thinking of waveforms. A lot of how I see the future going is with spectrograms. You can see like RX, how powerful of a tool it is, right? To give you an idea, all of AI music works with spectrograms. So all the generation is just based off of that. So definitely that's something that you should learn. It's an incredible tool for mastering, for fixing stuff, even for fixing tracks. Like we're in a time where everybody producers in their bedrooms, or like they're in not such ideal places. And the best tools for cleaning audio are going to be messing with spectrograms. So I'm definitely I think that's like a blind spot for a lot of people.
Interesting. Do you have any specific products that are on the market that you are in favor of?
I love RX. I mean, RX has such a good collection of tools that, you know, I can pretty much do whatever I want with that, especially for music production. Like you don't need more than that. Like there's great stuff in there. Gates are becoming really cool too. Like there's a lot of plugins that are starting to learn how to gate drums, for example. So like it will understand what your snare is and not kill it. So you'll hear the ring, but you don't hear the hi-hats on top of it. So there's a lot of stuff like that where, you know, we're seeing these new technologies, and like don't be afraid, like jump head first and like learn it, because this is going to be game changer for us, you know. Even whatever makes your job easier, you know. If typing emails is a pain in the ass, like you said, like ChatGPT will be a great thing for you to like figure out. If you spend so much time, like, I don't know, figuring out like, how to clean your gates or cleaning your tracks, like there's tools for that now that are incredible. Just spend some time researching what's out there and like try stuff out. Like don't get boxed in the things you know.
You know, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's, for example, when the record labels were faced with MP3s and the possibility of what Napster brought to the table, they all freaked out. And instead of embracing it and figuring out how can we harness this for our benefit, I think AI is the same way. I think we as audio professionals need to, and those of us who blend the two of our artist and audio professional, don't bury your head in the sand. Don't think the sky is falling. Embrace the technology, learn it, figure out how it can benefit what you're doing. And
for sure.
Because if you run from it, you're just going to ignore it and you're going to get behind, and then it's going to bite you in the ass later.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, it's not a new thing. Like if you think beginning of the 1900s, right? Like you had all these musicians and like that was their job. There's no recordings really. So you had just musicians that literally go to public places and that's how they perform. Like that's how they make their money. And somebody made a pianola, which for those that are too young for this, it's a piano that plays itself. It looks like a ghost is playing the piano, right? And you will just pull these rolls in and it will just play whatever songs. So all the musicians that were going to bars and stuff that the bar now has a pianola thought they were out of a job and everybody was freaking out because we're going to be replaced by machines, right? Mm-hmm. That created what we now know as mechanical royalties because it was a mechanical thing playing music. And that's what started how you get paid for records, right? Like how in the 70s, everything boomed and like you had people making insane amount of money selling like vinyl and then CDs and tapes and whatnot. All that came from mechanical. Well, a lot of it came from mechanical royalties, right? That came from somebody had a fear of we're getting replaced and somebody had an idea like, well, how about we make money of the songs that we made? I think that's a lot of how we have to start shifting our mindsets, right? Like, let's get over with the panic stage. Let's move on to how can we use this to make a career and make ourselves, more comfortable than we are right now.
And historically, that's always been an issue. Every new technological development faces resistance. I mean, the camera faced great resistance from those who painted.
Right.
They thought they were going to be out of a job. Drummers thought drum machines were going to replace them. It's just like if you look back time and time again, every time some new thing shows up on the scene, there's a faction of people that embrace it and there's a faction of people who freak out.
And then there's people that, take advantage of it in a way that you never thought. Like, can you imagine like 9 Inch Nails without drum machines? Like, there's so many cool things you can do if you just embrace technology and get creative with it.
Yeah. Well, that's a great note to end on. Alberto, thank you so much for making time for me. And again, we have to thank Steve Shady for introducing us. And yeah, I look forward to staying in touch with you and
likewise.
Maybe having you back in a couple of years and seeing where you're at in the journey.
Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me. This is awesome.
Absolutely.
Great chat.
All right. Well, you take care.
You too.
Thanks.
Cheers.